Hey guys, welcome to Retro Crisis. In today's video, I'll show you how you can play PlayStation 2 games in RetroArch, and this process will cover you from beginning to end. So you don't have to have any prior knowledge on how to use RetroArch or any PlayStation 2 emulators. This guide is designed for beginners, and I'll also go through which options you should enable within the new LRPS2 core. Anyway, in this guide, I'll be installing a fresh installation of RetroArch with all the factory settings, and I'll guide you through every step. So the first thing to do is go to retroarch.com and then scroll down to this section here where it says Get RetroArch, and then scroll down and then go to Download Nightly. And then once you've downloaded the file, you should see something that looks like this, and then double click it to initiate the installation process. Click Next. I agree. And then here you can select where you'd like to install it to. And then once you've selected the location, press Next. And then here, where it says Select Components to Install, make sure you check DirectX 9. And then Next, and Install. And now we just wait for the installation to complete. And then you'll see this DirectX pop-up appear, and then go to Accept Agreement, go Next, and then make sure you uncheck the Install the Bing bar box. Get rid of that. Go to Next, and then the installation process will resume. And then once it says installation complete, click on Finish, and then click Finish again. Excellent, so now RetroArch has been installed. And now you just need to open the folder that you installed it to. So I installed it to this folder here, so I'm going to delete the original installation file, and then I'll open the RetroArch folder. Right, so scroll all the way down to the end of the folder, and open up retroarch.exe. So initially, RetroArch will open in a little window, but what we can do is, if you just click on RetroArch once, and then press F on your keyboard, and that should make RetroArch full screen. And hopefully this should be much easier to follow. Right, so I'll take you through a few of the settings that I normally do first. So let's go to Settings, let's go to Video, let's go to Output, Video, and go to Vulkan. And then press Enter. And let's go back, and you can do that by pressing backspace on your keyboard, right to the beginning. So now we need to quit RetroArch and open it up again. Excellent, so once you've reopened RetroArch, go to Online Updater, go to Core Downloader, and scroll all the way down to Sony. And then once you're here, go down to Sony PlayStation 2 LRPS2, and then press Enter to begin the download. And you should see the progress bar in the bottom left corner. And then once you see that beautiful green check mark, go back. So whilst we're on the Online Updater menu, it's probably worth updating a few things here. Now what I normally do is I go all the way down to Update Core Info Files, press Enter to update this, go down to Update Assets, press Enter, go down to Update Controller Profiles, Enter, Update Cheats, Enter, Update Databases, Enter, and then update whatever's behind this, and again, Update Shaders. So basically, I just update all of that. Some of these files are quite large, so they might take a little while. You may notice RetroArch close and reopen itself. Don't worry, that's a part of the process. So we're just waiting for all the download status bars in the bottom left corner to disappear. Fantastic. Once those have all downloaded, we can now close RetroArch. And you can do that by going back and go down to Quit. And then Enter. Great. So now we should be back in the RetroArch folder. And next we're going to go all the way up to a folder called System, which should be here. And if you open it, you'll notice that it's empty. Right, so in order to run PlayStation 2 games within LRPS2, you need a BIOS file. And unfortunately, because BIOS files tend to be copyrighted materials, I'm unable to share those with you. But if you go to Google and type in PlayStation 2 BIOS file download or something along those lines, I'm sure something will appear in the search results. Once you have got that BIOS file, you need to paste it into this folder. And it should look something like this. Thankfully, LRPS2 is not region locked. So if you manage to get a Japanese, North American, or European BIOS file, it should work fine. You don't necessarily need BIOS files for every single region, and they don't need to be named 100% correctly. As long as the data within the BIOS file is legitimate and not corrupted, it should be detected fine. Excellent, so now let's go back out of this folder and back out of the RetroArch folder. Right, so next step, the games. Now what I'm going to do is create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it game or games. Feel free to call it whatever you want, and then open it. And then here you need to copy and paste your PlayStation 2 game. And again, I can't provide any PlayStation 2 games to you, but if you go to Google and type in something like PlayStation 2 game download or something, I'm pretty sure something will come up in the search results. Right, so once you've finished copying all of your games to this folder, we can go back to RetroArch. So let's go up, let's go to RetroArch, and go down to retroarch.exe, and before you open it, if you haven't already done so, now would be a good time to plug your control pad into your computer. So whether you're using USB or Bluetooth, either should be fine. And once you've connected your control pad, open up RetroArch. Great. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to tell RetroArch to import our PlayStation 2 games, and it's very easy to do. So on the left hand side, go down to import content and go to scan directory. And now you just need to navigate to the folder where you stored all of your games. And then once you're in that folder, you won't see a list of your games, but don't worry, that's totally fine. As long as you're in the correct folder, that's all we need to do. And then go down to scan this directory and then press enter to scan. So if you only have one game, the scan should be pretty fast, but if you have a huge library of games, the scan might take some time. Now each time you add a new bunch of games to that folder, you just need to repeat this scan process again, and it will just do a quick scan for any new titles. And then once the scanning process is done, just go all the way back to the main menu, and then once you're there, if you go right to the bottom of the left hand side, you'll notice PlayStation 2 appears. And if we go right, there's the game we just imported. And then press enter on it, and now we should be good to load. So if you press enter on it once, before we load the game, if you want to make your RetroArch look a bit pretty, go down to download thumbnails and press enter. And this will make your user interface look a bit nicer. But if you have like 1,000 games in your RetroArch folder, you probably don't want to repeat this process. I'm going to show you an easy method to get thumbnails. So if we just go back to the main menu, and go to Online Updater and enter, and go down to Playlist Thumbnails Updater, and then go to the system that you'd like to update the thumbnails for, and then just press enter, and it will automatically download all the thumbnails for all of your games. Right, sorry about that tangent. Let's go back to the main menu. Let's go down to PlayStation 2, and then press enter on your game, and then go to Run. And then it's going to go to suggested cores. So this screen is normally useful if you have multiple different cores for the same system. So for example, if you're playing a Sega Mega Drive game and you have multiple different Sega Mega Drive emulators, they'll all be listed here, and then you can select which core you'd prefer. But in this case, because we just have the one, we'll select it. And now we've selected the core, it should remember it for next time. So you shouldn't have to do that process again. And now let's go to Run. Right, so some of you may have noticed that RetroArch has crashed, and that's totally fine. There's another step we need to do. So in your RetroArch folder, go right to the top, go to System. So this is where we placed the BIOS file earlier. But now you'll notice a new folder has appeared. And this folder would only have been generated after we had tried to launch LRPS2. So what we need to do is right-click on the BIOS file, go to Cut, open up PCSX2, go to the BIOS folder, and then paste the BIOS file here. And now let's go back to the main RetroArch folder again, go all the way down, open up RetroArch, and now we can begin loading the game once more. Let's go to the left and all the way to the bottom, PCSX2, and then open up the game and run. Excellent, and now your game should have loaded. Now on your keyboard, press the F1 key, and this will take you to the RetroArch quick menu. If you want to go back to the game, you can either press F1 or you can go to resume. If you'd like to restart the game, you go to restart. If you'd like to exit the game, go to close content. And there's many other options, but I'm not going to be covering those. But what I will be covering is core options. So go down to core options and open it. So these are the system options for the LRPS2 core, and I'll take you through some of them. If at any point you feel like you've messed up any of these options, it's totally fine. All you need to do is go to Manage Core Options, and you can go down and go to Reset Options, and that will factory reset LRPS2. Right, so let's go back. Let's go to System. So at the top, if your BIOS file is working correctly, it will automatically detect it. So here I'm using a European BIOS file. Next is Fast Boot. This will allow you to bypass the PlayStation 2's BIOS loading screen. I'll be leaving this on just so I can get into the games quicker. If you'd like to use cheats in RetroArch, you can do so by going to Enable Cheats and changing it to On. But what you will need to do is add your own cheat files, which you can find from the internet, and I'll show you where you can add them. So in your RetroArch folder, if we go back to the top, do you remember the System folder, PCSX2, and there's a Cheats folder. So if you go in there, all you need to do is copy and paste your cheats into here. And now let's go back and let's go to Video and go to Renderer. Now, if you're happy with the way your game is playing so far, you can just leave this to auto if you want. However, if you want to take advantage of the latest changes to LRPS2, you probably want to select this one down here, which is ParaLLEl-GS. So as long as you're using the Vulkan video driver in RetroArch, which we set earlier on in the video, ParaLLEl-GS should work fine. So let's select it. Great, so once you pressed enter on it, it will just take you back to the previous menu. Right, so next let's go down to super sampling. So currently it's set to native, and if you select it, now you can leave this to native, but if you do have a fairly powerful computer, you can change this to 4x SSA ordered. Next go down to high res scan-out and turn this on. Next is texture, and you can just leave this off. Next is back buffer, I'm going to leave this off. And then next go down to force texture LODO and turn this on. Next is deinterlacing. You could probably just leave that to automatic. Next is no interlacing hint. You can leave that on. And widescreen hint, you can turn on also. And then just select the aspect ratio of your screen. So mine is 16:9. And next go down to PCRTC anti-blur and switch this off. Now let's go back. We don't need to touch anything in the emulation menu. And let's go down to input. Now here you're able to adjust the analog stick sensitivity. So maybe for the moment leave this as it is, but if you're struggling with your analog sticks, you can just come back here, press enter, and you can change the number to adjust the sensitivity. Now there isn't a number that will work for everybody, so feel free to select whichever one works best for you. And now let's go back a menu, back one more, and now we're back on the quick menu. Now all the settings we've done today, once you've set them, you don't need to do them again. And these settings will work for every PlayStation 2 game. So you can just set and forget. And now what you can do is go to resume to get back into your game. Now you can see in the game I'm using, it's automatically stretched the game out to make it widescreen. Now some people may like this. Personally, I don't like this. I much rather prefer the original aspect ratio. So I'm going to press F1 to go back into the quick menu, go all the way down to core options, video, and I'm going to go down to widescreen hint and then go to off and then go back and back again and resume. And it's going to correct the aspect ratio. There's one more video setting I want to introduce you to. This is a setting I prefer to use, but I understand that it won't be for everybody. So right now you can see that the game screen is reaching the top and the bottom of the screen. So what it's doing is kind of stretching the game out whilst retaining the aspect ratio. However, whilst this is good enough for most people, anybody that likes to pixel peep and is very sensitive to image scaling may not like this setting. And there's one way to correct it. So if you press F1 on your keyboard, now we're in the quick menu. So what you want to do here is go back and go to the left and go to settings and go to video and then go to scaling. Now currently integer scaling is set to off, but we want to turn this on. I just want to reiterate, this step is entirely optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. This is just a preference of mine. So let's turn that on and let's go back and back again. And if you go to the left and main menu, go back to the quick menu of the game and then go to resume. Now you'll notice that the game screen is slightly smaller. However, in terms of image scaling, it's now pixel perfect. And that's it. Now you're ready to enjoy your PlayStation 2 games. Thanks for bearing with me with all of the options I've taken you through. And don't worry, you're not expected to memorize every single option. Feel free to come back to this video anytime you've forgotten anything, and I strongly encourage you to play around with the settings we went through today. Experiment, try some different options. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, and even more so, I hope you enjoy playing some PlayStation 2 games. This has been Retro Crisis. Thank you for watching.